It's the Bleav in Texans podcast presented to you by FanDuel. And on FanDuel right now, the Texans are plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl. Far behind teams that the Texans beat last year, like the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens. This injustice will not stand. Head on over to FanDuel where you can take a look at that as well as many other ways to express your optimism or pessimism about the Texans. Today, we've got Luke Easterling on from Athlon Sports. Here he is. It's the Bleav in Texans podcast brought to you by FanDuel, and I'm joined today by Luke Easterling. You can find him on Twitter at Luke Easterling, and of course, you can find him on Athlon Sports. We all have memories of you can still get the glitzy draft guides, right?
Absolutely, man. I'm not gonna lie. You're gonna talk about growing up reading that magazine. That's literally my favorite thing to do in this job. Is every year when I get to put together those scouting reports and team needs and everything, and those when the pre-copies get here in the mail, I'm a 12-year-old all over again. I'm like, it's here. So it's so great,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, no, and they're awesome, especially just when you have the player profiles and everything. It doesn't matter if there have been trades and guys are in different draft positions or anything. It's easy to maybe it's because we're getting old, but it's nice to have something you can just actually like focus on and not click on 18 different links.
Yep, no ads popping up in your face, no AI anything. It's human made product that's just nice in there in your hands, and you can make notes on it and draw little faces on the pictures if you want. It's fun.
Just rip stuff out, put it up on your wall,
right?
Yeah, my wife doesn't let me put stuff up on the wall like that anymore. You did. I like it when draft people do this. You've got your mock drafts where you try to project what teams are going to do, but then you do your own where you clearly say, "Look, I'm not trying to predict what's going on, but this is what I would do with my mock draft." And with the Texans, the number 28 overall pick, I wish I had a sounder or something to play here to make it more dramatic. But Kade McDonald, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, which has been mocked to the Texans a lot. It makes a whole lot of sense in my opinion, but what's your thinking behind it?
Yeah, it's funny. There was probably eight picks in this mock that were kind of like, okay, this is what I actually think is going to happen and what I would do in this scenario. So I don't avoid common sense when they all line up just to be contrarian. But no, I think when you're looking at where the Texans are sitting now, I think the reason that kind of pick keeps coming up over and over again is if you're in a spot where it feels like the strength or the meat of a position group that you need to address is going to be in that same range. That's why you always see those same names, kind of in the same range. And so when you look at the interior defensive line class here, you look at maybe Chicago at 25 could be in the market for that type of guy. But other than that, I really don't see, Peter Woods from Clemson might go ahead of the Texans, but maybe not. There seems to be some really wide variation of opinions on him as well. And so we could get to 25, 28 without really any interior guys, maybe one off the board. And I think that's obviously a great scenario for Houston where, to watch DeMeco Ryans offense or to watch his defense work and to think that they need anything is kind of, it's scary to think that unit could get better. But I think that's really the one place where I feel like they could expand is not just, and they need both types of players too. That's why you've seen me mock guys like Peter Woods, guy like Caleb Banks, which I think maybe still in play for them kind of early in the second round there with that extra second they got from Washington. But McDonald is a guy that I think right out of the box, you talk about a high floor guy that at worst is just going to dominate on rundowns. He's going to take on those double teams. He's going to plug the gaps and make his teammates better. He's going to filter everything. He's going to force everything out and just take up space. But I think he's really untapped as a pass rusher. I really think that he's got the athletic ability. He's got the physical tools to be more productive in that way than he was at Ohio State, than really he needed to be there. And so I think that part would be exciting to just get a guy like that in the building. And I feel this way about Peter Woods as well. You want to talk about playing out of position and misused a bit. I mean, he was playing nose, he was playing 5-tech, he's playing edge, he's playing anything but that disruptive 3-tech, just get up the field and blow things up. That really I think he would be best at. But no, I just think it's a great spot where, DeMeco's defense could do with a dominant nose that I think Kade McDonald can be, but I think he's more versatile than that. I think he can slide around and play some different alignments, attack a little more upfield, and not just be a guy that plugs up the holes. But I think it's a great spot for them, both at 28 again, and then again I think at 38 in the second round, where they've got a chance to maybe not double dip at that position, but be confident that they're going to get a guy at either of those spots that can either be the nose or either be that upfield disruptor.
You know, a couple of years ago in the second round, where the Texans, as they usually do, they don't have a first-round pick because and nobody in Houston is banking on the Texans staying at number 28.
Nope.
But it was in 2024 where it felt like the Texans were kind of poised to grab a defensive tackle, and then there was that run of 4 defensive tackles that went in like five spots. Braden Fisk was one of them. A bunch of good ones went, and the Texans ended up getting Kamari Lassiter, so it worked out pretty well.
Not too bad.
But yeah, it feels like between Peter Woods, Kade McDonald, Lee Hunter, Caleb Banks, Christian Miller, it feels like it might end up being that kind of year for the Texans again, where they're feeling like, okay, we like these guys. Caserio will always talk about not necessarily falling in love with one particular player, but having a bucket of guys. And it feels like that like any one of these defensive tackles could be back half of the first round or early in the second round.
Yeah, it really could. And again, you'll see that pattern in my mocks going back. I do 3-4 round mock drafts every week at this point in the process. And so you'll see that trend and pattern, whoever it is. And again, this year it seems to be we've got a few more of the nose type guys, a few more of the run stuffing type guys than we do the disruptive upfield kind of pass rusher guys. But yeah, I just think wherever you are at 28, or again that pick in the second round, if any of those 4 or 5 guys that you mentioned are there, I feel like it makes a lot of sense. But that is the risk, right? That bucket, and again, you're looking at the teams that are picking ahead of you now. And I mean, you look at a team like Arizona high at the second round, they could use that nose. You got multiple teams in there and those teams might not stay there either. You can't just assume that you're going to stay, 6 or 7 picks in the second round and somebody's not going to jump over you to get the last guy in that bucket at that position. And so the cool thing for Houston, I think at 28 in particular, is the way they were able to move in the offseason so far. And this is what you should always do. The good teams always elevate the floor at every position of need, every really glaring need on your roster. Go and get veterans that can elevate the floor, that you can say, hey, if we don't draft a guy early at this position, we're not going to be screwed, right? We're not going to be in a really, really bad way. Obviously, we'd prefer to upgrade if we get the chance to get the guy we like, but you plug in a Braden Smith at right tackle to replace Titus Howard. You do some of these things that can just, if I have to roll with this guy week 1, I'm cool with that compared to what we had before free agency. So that you go into the draft, especially a team like Houston, sitting at 28, where it's no longer, oh my God, I have to take an offensive lineman here. Like, I've got to address this to help CJ. It's, man, if I feel like I really love a D tackle at 28, and that bucket might empty, like you said, 4 or 5 guys by the time I get back on the clock, I can take him at 28. I can just take him at 28 and go home and be happy and be fine and not feel like I'm pushed into, man, I really have to take this other position and really hope those D tackles are going to stay on the board. They've really positioned themselves well, and kudos to Nick for doing that. But I think that gives them a lot of freedom at 28, which again is what the best teams do. You want to go into this draft not having to feel like I have to reach for this position. I have to get, if that bucket is empty, right, by the time you get to 28, now I've just got to reach for the next best left tackle or receiver or whatever, even if I have a much lower grade on him than somebody in another position. So I think Houston's done a great job positioning themselves to just sit at 28 and take who they want without worrying that, there's going to be some need that's just not filled.
Yeah, and that's it's been nice since they made those signings on the offense, and they re-signed Sheldon Rankins. So the Texans have done a really good job of bringing guys in and getting the most out of them at defensive tackle. Yeah. So it kind of opens everything up as to where they might actually go for a bigger swing at a position that people aren't talking about a lot. And I was really intrigued on your what would I do draft, that you had Malachi Lawrence, the edge rusher from UCF, going 15 overall to the Bucks. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's higher than most people have him going. And we just had John Harris on the radio this morning. He brought up Malachi Lawrence because he loves him. And with me watching Malachi Lawrence, the first time I watched any video of him in the draft process, I clicked on the NFL.com profile and, read what Lance Zierlein had to say about him. And then I started watching the workout videos, and I thought there was a glitch or something because they show him running his 40, and it's a 4.5 40. I had read that he ran a 4.5 40, but he looks like I thought it was a big slot receiver. Something running. He didn't look anything like a defensive end, and yet he's 255 pounds. He's a freakish athlete.
Yeah, and I'll preface this by saying that as a proud University of South Florida alumni, you know that if I'm hyping a UCF player, a University of
Yeah,
Central Florida player, I'm doing it because I have to. Like
yeah.
I'm not doing it. I'm not lying about this because otherwise I would because I'm not a huge UCF fan. But no, man, this guy as a prospect, he just kept every time I went back to the tape, he was just convincing me that he's got that spark as a pass rusher. And again, he's not a complete player yet. He could get a little thicker if you want to play him, on rundowns. He's got some, but he's got tools, right? He's big, he's long, he's got the foundation, the building blocks that if you want to improve those things, everything that he needs to get better at, I think is changeable and coachable. And I think that's the big difference when you're looking at what a guy can't do yet. And I think way too many evaluators get into this like, oh, he sucks against the run, therefore he
Mhm.
will always. And it's like, nah, man, that's what NFL coaches are for. That's what the weight room is for. That's what all these things are for, to improve these things. Some of those things you can't fix, but I think the things that he needs to improve are absolutely improvable. And the one thing, again, you draft first round edge rushers to get after the quarterback. That's what they are going to make their money doing. And I just think if you look at even some of the advanced metrics in terms of pressure rate, I know he only had 7 sacks in terms of finishing, but man, the dude is disruptive. He's, again, like you said, tall, he's long, he's explosive. That combine workout just kind of, again, it's not what some people might think it is and be like the end all be all of everything. And we throw out the film when a guy, posts a perfect RAS, right? A relative athletic score. But it can confirm things for you, and it can send you back to the film to verify, is this guy football fast or is he underwear fast, right? And
Yeah.
so all of these different things. And with Lawrence, when you see the explosiveness on tape and you wonder to yourself, is it level of competition sometimes with some of the smaller school guys? But then that's what I think the combine is good for. Senior Bowl, same way, where it's like you get these guys in an environment that can kind of equalize them and say, oh, this guy's just a damn good athlete no matter who he's on the field with. Like he's comparatively athletically on the same page as all of these other guys. And when you do that and you combine it with the film, I just think at the end of the day, teams are going to have a hard time talking themselves out of what he does super well right now and what he can get better at. And that's why I think 15 feels high now. And I think he's one of those guys that definitely ends up in the back end of the first round as a guy that a lot of people go, wow, I didn't really expect that.
Yeah, and that's those are always the scariest guys too, because the combine warriors that haven't had it translate. The cool thing about that is that Danielle Hunter was one of those guys who in
Yeah.
college didn't produce a whole lot. And with Will Anderson, people forget how raw he was as a pass rusher.
Sure.
He was just a whole lot of brute power and speed and hustle, and he was making plays all over the place. But that classic, all right, he's making plays all over the place, but he's doing it with a lot of just grind and power on a really good defense. That doesn't always translate well.
No.
But it's cool to watch. Every year Will talk about in the offseason what he's working on. And then you see during the season, over the course of the season, oh, look at that. Yep, it's
You
all
see it
showing
show
up.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. This year it was finishing at the quarterback and getting the ball out. And the second half of the season in the playoffs, there he is, just boom, ball, strip sacks and everything. So that's I I I I have to try to be careful because I'm guilty of at times feeling like, well, if D'Amico likes the guy and they put him in there, then he's probably going to develop in advance. But Malachi Lawrence feels like one of those guys. I think on the opposite side of the spectrum, the guy that would make me nervous that we're starting to hear more in Texans conversations is Kaden Proctor. And it's the classic, all right, guy's got all the physical ability where he should be going in the top 10. Offensive tackle at Alabama, might project to play guard in the NFL. But I'm not even certain the Texans even have him on his board because there seem to be a lot of question marks about everything else.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that sentence. It's like Alabama tackle who might have to be a guard. Like we've seen that guy. Like we've had a couple of DJ Fluker comes to mind, and not that he was a bad guard, but it was just like if you're spending a top 20, top 25 pick, and again maybe he gets to 20. I really don't think he does. I think that position is so valuable, and somebody's going to take a chance on that physical ability before he gets to 28. I think, but that's. And again, this gets to something that I always like. It kind of always rubs me the wrong way, especially when we talk to offensive line guys about this, where it's just like, oh, move him to guard. Just move him to guard.
Right. Yes.
If he struggles with X, Y, or Z at tackle, just move him to guard. It'll be fine. It's like, bro, it doesn't work that way. Like, this isn't Madden where you just switch the position and the rating stays the same, right? Where you just slide a guy over.
You know what I always say? It's like you never do that with defensive ends where, oh, he's not a good defensive end, just move him to nose tackle.
Yeah.
Like, no,
slide
it's
him inside. He'll be fine.
It's harder to find really good defensive ends, but that doesn't mean that every defensive end can go down and play nose. It's a whole different skill. But before we do that, I know a lot of you listening or watching might be hiring somebody. You're acting like a GM is about to draft a prospect, but the thing is, you're hiring somebody that you want to come and work/play for you, but also who genuinely wants to come work for you. You never draft the guy that just flat out said, I don't want to come play for your team. Just like you don't want to hire somebody who isn't super interested in coming to work for your company. That's why you post your job on ZipRecruiter. If you're hiring, you want a candidate who's passionate about your role, but you can't get that insight from a resume unless you post your job on ZipRecruiter, because ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology not only finds qualified candidates quickly, they also have a new feature that shows you the most interested qualified candidates first, so you meet the right people faster. Candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job specifically. So it's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated hiring site based on G2. Look, don't draft any players who don't want to play for your football team. Don't hire any candidates who don't really, really want to work in the role that you've defined. Find candidates who really want your job on ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
And you can, are there things that can mask what you're struggling at by playing at guard and having somebody on either side and not being out on an island? Yeah, technically, yes. And it's not that doesn't work sometimes, but it's like so many of the things that if a guy struggles at tackle, sliding him inside is not going to fix. Like, those things still need to be fixed. And so I think that because he's just so massive, he could still be a dominant guard in the right scenario with the same, but again, the development's still necessary. You're still going to have to develop the technical side of things because that's where he struggles, right? Like you said, similar to Will, where it's like, I'm just used to overpowering everybody. Like, I'm dominant all the time just because I'm bigger and more. And obviously he's a hell of an athlete. They kept finding ways to get the ball in his hands in the goal line, like throwing it to him, handing it to him. So it's not
those runs, that one touchdown run is incredible.
Crazy, right? So, I mean, obviously the possibilities are endless. There's a lot of fun to be had there. But again, I'll say this on both sides of the coin with Houston, where it's like, I don't think he gets there, but if he does, they may be one of the few teams that can afford that risk because they've done so well to fill all of their other needs, where maybe they feel comfortable in saying, hey, if he misses, we're not gonna die. We're not gonna be too out of it. And if he hits, holy, we've got somebody, and that could be really special. And even if he's just mid, right? Even if he just doesn't work out at tackle, we move into guard. He plays 8 years at guard, and he's pretty okay. Like, that's not too bad for a team picking in the back end of the first round who has pretty much everything else. That's not going to hurt too badly. I just don't see that being the pick for them. Like, I just don't. Again, I don't think he gets there. I think there's too many teams ahead of them that need offensive linemen that are going to swing on those traits before he gets there. But I just wish, again, as with everything in life and sports, I just wish there was a little more nuance to that conversation, where it's just like, oh, he's struggling with technique at tackle, so slide him into guard, where technique doesn't matter. Like, what?
Right, yeah.
The technique's just different. If anything, it's going to be harder. He hasn't played that position. He's been playing tackle. You're starting ahead of the game if you're trying to develop his technique at tackle. You slide him inside the guard, you're going to have to change more things and fix more things. It's
get caught playing with a high pad level against Aaron Donald or something.
Leverage isn't going to get better inside. Sorry.
The other people keep agitating for me to talk about the centers in this class, and I don't. I'm going to ask experts or people that have actually watched Connor Lew and Keon Rutledge and other, because this is supposed to be a good year for centers, where again you can get those guys second round and later, and I think the Texans really might take a crack at a center.
Yeah, Connor Lew's a guy that ends up in that Texan spot late in the second round quite a bit for me in my mock drafts. And again, part of it, he's 20, man. He's 20 years old and a 3-year starter at Auburn. So you're talking about a guy that's got 3 years of starting experience against SEC competition, and he's still at 20 years old got so much growth and so much ability to develop and hit a higher ceiling that you're like, man, I love the floor here and I love the ceiling. Great athlete, smart guy. Obviously, you got to have somebody in that position that can make your checks, make your calls. And again, when you're facing SEC defenders all the time, I think you're going to be a little more pro ready than a lot of guys. That said, I think he's probably the first center off the board. But if they do wait, there's so many guys, like even early on day 3 that I love. I mean, Sam Heck from Kansas State,
Oh yeah,
fantastic at the Senior Bowl, and his film is so clean. I really love Logan Jones out of Iowa, another guy that's a great athlete, a little bit smaller, but man, he's tough as hell. Parker Brailsford is getting pretty small at that point out of Alabama, but again, a guy that's experienced in the SEC, and the athleticism can be an advantage to you if you don't mind the size. Jake Slaughter from Florida is kind of more of a traditional guy in terms of his size and power. But yeah, man, I just love. I mean, even Brian Parker, the second out of Duke, he played tackle, but I guess he's going to be on the Graham Barton plan, where it seems like he's going to be a center at the next level. He did some of that at the Senior Bowl to show everybody that he can kind of play every position. So it's one of those things where I do these 3 and 4 round mock drafts, and I get into the 3rd, 4th round, and I'm like, damn, there's still like 3 or 4 centers on the board that I'd be super happy with here. And so, if they want the best one, I do think Connor Lew is a fantastic player, and I love that upside as such a young prospect with a ton of experience. But if they don't take him early, I love the depth of that class into the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah, that's where, again, with the Nick Caserio strategy, it feels like another classic example of, all right, even if he has Connor Lew rated as the highest guy, he doesn't have a huge ego, I think, about knowing that dead fast, okay, my rankings are the word of God and we have to stick to that. He's got a lot more comfort with the ambiguity of the draft process, and which I like. I like GMs that don't have huge egos. The one guy too that keeps coming up with the Texans, because the Texans last year did try to trade up into the teens, right around 16, 17, 18. Nick Caserio himself said they tried to trade up. What are the chances that the tight end Kenyon Sadiq falls past 15 or so?
I think it's always possible, just because the NFL is weird with that position, right? Brock Bowers fell out of the top 10, right? I mean, yeah. So you can, and there's the Brock Bowers at 13 or whatever, and he becomes what he has already become. And then there's like the OJ Howard who falls to 19 and feels like, oh my God, such a steal. What an athlete. But it just never happens, right? He struggles. Injuries, I know, played a part in that for him in Tampa. But Sadiq is interesting because you've got to do a ton of projection with him. Obviously, the athleticism is crazy. He's not tall, but he's not small either. He's 6'3", like 245. So he's kind of rocked up for a 6'3" guy, but he's still not huge. But I mean, obviously, the speed and athleticism, he's just a strange guy. Like, I don't think he had a completion over 30 yards at Oregon. Mm-hmm. And which is weird for a usage guy, which, again, one of my cardinal rules about scouting is that what a player was asked to do in college is not all he is capable of doing in the NFL. And it's funny, at Oregon, of all places, where we saw Justin Herbert, who was almost like held back by that offense at Oregon, then he goes to the Chargers, and he's been a better quarterback for them than he ever was at Oregon. And so it's hard. That's what makes this an art and not a science, man. Like, there's no way to say, hey, how was this guy, who's such an explosive athlete and should be such a downfield weapon with that speed and that athleticism, why was he never doing that, like pushing the seams? And why was he much more of an intermediate and short and kind of get it after the catch target? So you can look at that both ways. A glass half empty, you're like, oh, well, he's a guy that's not going to live up to his athleticism. If they would have used him that way. Glass half full, you're like, man, this guy's just scratching the surface. We can unlock that part of his game. We can do that. And again, for a team that has positioned themselves to be able to make somewhat of a luxury pick here, I mean, you think C.J. Stroud wouldn't want to try to unlock the possibilities of a guy with those physical traits at the position? And so, I think his range is all over the place because he's such an athlete. And again, the potential is there. I mean, can you see him going to Kansas City at 9 to be the next, the replacement for Travis Kelce? Yeah. 11 to Miami, who needs everything, right? So just build on talent. I think Baltimore at 14 would be a really scary place for him to go for a lot of people. To be, that I know they need a pass catcher of some sort, but that would be a fun thing to give Lamar, and a guy that can create some matchup problems. So I don't know, man. At Carolina at 19 there's a lot of teams that if he's still on the board, they might just throw everything out and be like, oh, that guy's there. I didn't see that coming, and they'll just take him because of that potential.
Well, that you touched on a theme again there of asking what it was he asked to do in college, how does the scheme affect him, all of that, and to go back to something you said about Peter Woods, the defensive tackle
Yeah.
earlier. It reminds me a little bit of when Will Anderson was at Alabama,
Yeah.
and all right, he's playing 5 technique, he's playing 4-eye, he's doing all
Yep.
these things that don't necessarily translate to being a pure edge rusher in the NFL. So with Peter Woods, that talk a little bit more about that dynamic of him having to do multiple different things.
Yeah, because again, one of the surface arguments that we heard from people, because going into this year, Peter Woods was like top 5, right? In all those like early mock drafts and rankings that we all did, it was like, man, this guy's got, special traits. And at that point, he was playing a lot more kind of edge, even at, 280 plus. And it was like, so he was out of position in one way on one end of the spectrum. And then this year it was a lot more nose. He was a lot more inside at still like now he's too small to be doing that. He was too big
Yeah.
really to be playing edge. Now he's too small to be playing inside. And there's just not enough reps where he's like, man, put him at the 3 and let him rush, like let him get upfield, let him disrupt and explode into the backfield. And so, and we've done this with multiple guys, interior guys, over the last decade or so. I remember Bud Dupree at Kentucky was playing 5 tech all the time. He was never playing on the edge. Ed Oliver at like 285 at Houston was playing nose all the time. And it was like, guys, how do we what are we doing here?
And doing it in a way of like, it's not like he was playing old school 3-4 offensive.
Right.
He was slanting every single time. Yeah. It was hard to project exactly what he was going to be.
So the surface argument about Woods this year was like, oh, he didn't live up to the hype. The production was bad. I'm like, yeah, but why? Like, why was the production bad? And I don't think it was a Peter Woods problem. I do think it was a scheme problem. So, I mean, again, if you're talking about a guy who, if you strip away all of that and say, who is the player? What can the player do? And what am I capable of unlocking in him? And if I put him in the position that he should have been put in, I can make him the player that he always could be. And that's the scariest. I actually had the Texans, I think it was last week or the week before, I had Houston moving up to like 19 to get Peter Woods, just because I love the idea of D'Amico getting a hold of a guy like that and saying, all right, come do what you're meant to do here and do it in a defense that already is just absolutely loaded. It's one thing to put a guy in position to make plays. It's another thing to do it when you have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and that secondary and all those guys around you where you can't be the focal point. Like we can't.
They rotate. You don't have to be a starter week 1. You can come in and play 20 or 30
You're going to
snaps.
get one-on-ones, one after one-on-one after one. Like you are always going to be isolated and get a chance to get one-on-one matchups. So I think that's a scary spot for him to land, and I think worthy of them trying to move up a little bit to get a guy like that. Is there a little risk to it because the production, again, if it plays out that way and it just ends up that he can't be the guy everybody kind of hoped he would be, we've heard that story before too, and that's, again, why this is an art and not a science. But I think if he's got a chance to be the dominant player that I think everybody hoped he was going to be coming into this season or last season, Houston is at the top of my list of the places that could help him become that player.
I don't know if you remember what grade you had on Logan Hall when he was coming out, but I know you grew up a Bucs fan.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I mean, we're all intrigued here about Logan Hall moving from that scheme in Tampa to Houston now.
Yeah, so the fun thing about Logan is that, and something that's kind of annoying for Bucs fans is that I feel like it finally started to click last year. Like he finally started to become, because the Bucs took him at 33. They traded out of the first round, and they took him with that first pick in the second round that year. And I had like a mid-second on him, if I remember correctly. So it wasn't, much of a reach. And I liked his fit in Bowles' scheme, right, where they're going to be moving. It's so very, variable, and everybody's alignment. I mean, you're dropping Vita Vea into coverage, for God's sakes. Like, they're going to be doing whatever they want with that. So again, to put him in he's got the size and the skill set to play all over the place. And I feel like traditional scheme, you'd have him as that 5 tech, right? Because he's 6'5", he's got the length, he can play at 290, he can play at 275. So you can really do whatever you want with him. But I think Houston fans should be excited about the fact that if you compare the first 3 years of his film with last year he really started to be like, okay, that's a guy we took in the 30s. Like, that's a guy who's providing some juice as a pass rusher, no matter where we line him up. He's using the size and the length to set the edge when we have him out there. I think he's finally getting to the point. He's the guy that you get excited about as a free agent, because he's like, man, he's kind of a rotational guy that now he's still 26, 27. And we're going to get the best version of him, and we really didn't have to break the bank to do it. So thanks, Tampa Bay, for kind of developing him to that point and then not paying him. We're going to be able to reap the rewards of that, and I think he's a prime kind of, I don't know, breakout is a strong word, but like I think you're going to get the best version of Logan Hall that he's been so far in his career. If what we saw last year, and again, the fact that I really just trust D'Amico to maximize his guys, I think that's going to be a fun signing. Houston fans are going to really like Logan Hall.
And of course, I appreciate all of you listening or watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple, leave a 5-star review and maybe say some nice words. That'd be cool too. Nicer than FanDuel right now, who now have the Texans to win the AFC Championship at plus 1,000. Behind teams, again, that the Texans have already beat, like the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and the Chargers and everybody else. You can take advantage of this injustice over at FanDuel. Thanks for FanDuel sponsoring the Bleav in Texans podcast. Luke, really appreciate it. You guys can catch him on Twitter or X at Luke Easterling and, of course, at athlonsports.com. Really appreciate it, man.
Hey, my pleasure, Seth. Take care, man.